This is why they don't want you to watch until the end, and you're about to understand why. At first light, the Empire wakes to a carefully designed, quiet, wide courtyard swept clean. Guards standing like statues, and priests preparing bowls of water and ash as if the world itself needs to be calibrated. The narrator's question begins here: when a ruler is called, chosen, is it a truth from the sky? Or a story built on the ground, measured, rehearsed, and enforced until it feels inevitable? In the capital's main square, citizens gather behind rope lines, arranged not as a crowd but as a pattern. Officials hold sealed packets and blank tablets. Nothing is written for the public to read. Yet everyone is expected to understand. The ritual declares harmony without evidence. The mandate is not proven. It is performed, so often that doubt becomes socially expensive, and belief becomes the easiest way to belong. Inside a candlelit hall, advisors form a rigid ring around a table of maps with no names. As if places are not communities but tiles in a game, the emperor stands at the center, calm and still, while the priests sanctify planning as destiny. Here the story reveals its first mechanism: if policy is wrapped in sacred language, strategy stops looking like choice and starts looking like fate. At a border checkpoint, merchants wait with carts and bundles, halted by a table of weights and tokens. Priests burn incense beside a water bowl, blessing restriction as protection. The gate is not just a gate, it is a lesson. When movement depends on permission, permission feels like mercy, and when mercy is credited to heaven, the ruler becomes the translator of survival. A provincial court records disputes with seals and blank tablets, as if truth can be stamped into existence. Guards control the doorway, and the accused speak only through procedure. The mandate thrives in paperwork. People stop asking whether power is rightful and start asking only which stamp they need. Bureaucracy becomes devotion disguised as administration, because it trains obedience as routine. A famine relief hall offers thin rations measured to the last grain. The line is quiet, not because hunger is peaceful, but because fear is disciplined. The emperor watches from a distance as priests sanctify scarcity as a test. The narrator sharpens the theme: hardship does not weaken divine legitimacy, it can strengthen it, when survival arrives through controlled permission rather than through rights. In a high observatory, scholars measure the sky with instruments laid out like sacred tools. The public cannot verify the math, so precision becomes miracle. A comet, an eclipse, a rare alignment, anything can be turned into confirmation. The mandate becomes renewable, because the heavens are interpreted by the same hands that benefit from the interpretation. Knowledge is not free, it is guarded. A shipyard blessing ceremony frames a costly expedition as inevitability. Crates and barrels sit stacked. Soldiers stand ready, and priests sanctify departure as if the sea itself belongs to destiny. The emperor's calm posture suggests certainty, but the narrator asks what certainty is made of: planning, coercion, and narrative. When ambition is painted as sacred mission, criticism is recast as disloyalty. A monument unveiling in the city square teaches permanence. Stone does not argue, it asserts. The crowd stands behind ropes, allowed to witness but not to question. Priests bless the symbol, officials distribute tokens, and the emperor's presence turns architecture into propaganda. The mandate is carved into the landscape so that authority is experienced like weather, something you adapt to, not something you debate. A sealed archive corridor reveals the second mechanism: memory control. Scroll cases are moved under guard, doors are locked, and only approved readers are allowed near the record of the past. When archives are curated, history becomes adjustable. The narrator warns that destiny is easiest to claim when alternative versions of events cannot be accessed, compared, or even imagined. In a border fortress chapel, soldiers swear oaths under incense. Discipline becomes holiness, and obedience becomes purity. The mandate grows sharper at the frontier because fear is sharper there. When threats exist, real or exaggerated, the ruler claims only the chosen can protect the realm. And in that fear, control expands without needing justification beyond the word order. A rural tribunal tent turns judgment into theater. Villagers stand still behind ropes, officials count and stamp, priests sanctify penalties as moral correction. The mandate shifts blame downward, suffering becomes the people's failure, not policy's consequence. The narrator notes how this protects the center, because if pain is spiritual, reform is unnecessary, and punishment becomes proof of righteousness. A quarantine pier isolates travelers and frames restriction as compassion. Herbs and sealed jars sit on inspection tables. Guards enforce distance. Crisis becomes opportunity. The mandate grows during emergencies because fear lowers the cost of surrendering freedom. The ruler becomes protector, and surveillance becomes care, until the public forgets what normal life without checkpoints felt like. A pilgrimage checkpoint reveals devotion as revenue. Offerings become tolls, routes become regulated corridors. Priests bless the fees, and the emperor stands near a route map, calm as if belief itself belongs to the state. The narrator underlines the pattern. When spirituality is administered, the ruler inherits not only taxes but the emotional authority of the sacred. An artisan hall manufactures regalia, robes, bands, staffs, symbols without readable markings. Designed to be universal, the mandate becomes visual language. People learn to feel awe before they understand anything. The narrator explains, standardized aesthetics create instant legitimacy. They trigger recognition like a reflex. Power can be worn into being, repeated until it feels natural. In a rebellion negotiation pavilion, sealed packets and tokens sit like silent weapons. Even compromise becomes proof. The emperor frames concessions as heaven-guided wisdom. The mandate survives defeat by turning flexibility into destiny. The narrator points out the trick. If every outcome can be narrated as the plan, then nothing falsifies the claim of being chosen. A comet proclamation in a city square turns coincidence into confirmation. The crowd stares upward, the stage is below, the interpretation is prepared in sealed packets before anyone arrives. All becomes social pressure. Doubting in public feels like standing against the sky itself. The mandate grows strongest in shared wonder, when the crowd's emotion becomes the ruler's shield. An execution and pardon corridor shows the harsh heart of the system. Life and death pass through stamps, seals, and permission. Mercy is selective, and selection creates dependence. The narrator emphasizes that fear alone is unstable, but fear mixed with occasional relief becomes a leash. People cling to the ruler not because they love him, but because he controls the gates. A palace genealogy chamber curates bloodlines like evidence. Relics and scrolls are guarded, access is restricted, priests sanctify lineage. The mandate is anchored in manufactured continuity. The ruler is not presented as new power but as inevitable inheritance. The narrator notes that the past is rearranged so the present appears pre-approved by time itself. A war report chamber filters reality. Sealed packets stack high, maps have no names, outcomes are narrated as tests. Losses become lessons, and lessons require more control. The mandate uses secrecy to avoid accountability, while ritual language converts mistakes into spirituality. The narrator explains, when information is controlled, truth becomes whatever survives the corridor. A disaster-struck harbor becomes a stage for legitimacy. Relief tables offer tokens and measured aid. Priests bless recovery as sacred restoration. The emperor observes from above, serene, while the crowd learns to associate survival with the throne. The narrator notes the danger. When aid is politicized, gratitude is harvested, and dependence replaces resilience. A tribute caravan road shows wealth flowing inward. Weights and tokens measure extraction, incense blesses it. The mandate is fed materially and broadcast symbolically. The center receives resources. The periphery receives the story. The narrator highlights the exchange, grain for legitimacy, where obedience becomes the price of being included in the system's protection. A frontier schoolhouse trains children into belief. Tablets are blank for the viewer, but structure is visible. Calendars, compasses, routines. Guards control entry, funding follows loyalty. The narrator explains how mandates persist across generations, not by forcing adults forever, but by teaching children that destiny is normal governance. As ordinary as sunrise. A rumor court reveals mystery as design. Sealed packets, tokens, and silence management tools sit on a table like instruments of reality control. Priests sanctify secrecy, guards block corridors. The emperor stands calm, as if scandal can be purified. The narrator says the mandate thrives on controlled uncertainty. People cling to official interpretation because alternatives are punished or erased. A frontier funeral field turns death into fuel. Mourners are spaced, watched, and ritualized. The emperor stands on a ridge near a map, as if loss is a statistic. The mandate reframes casualties as sacred sacrifice, and the state inherits the moral high ground of grief. The narrator warns, when mourning is administered, truth becomes quieter. A market checkpoint slows commerce while calling it harmony. Licenses and fees are weighed under incense. The emperor stands near trade maps, calm as if value is destiny. The narrator points out that economic throttling can be disguised as moral order, until people accept scarcity as virtue and forget to question who benefits from the slowdown. A cliff pilgrimage platform uses geography as authority. Distance becomes holiness, access becomes privilege. The emperor stands at the highest point under a canopy, and the crowd remains below behind ropes. The mandate is strengthened by physical separation, when people cannot approach. They cannot verify. When they cannot verify, they believe. A sealed crisis council turns disaster into a narrative shield. Advisors stand around maps and sealed packets. Priests bless deliberation. Guards lock the exits. The emperor's calm suggests control, but the narrator clarifies, control over meaning matters more than control over outcomes. If crisis is always a test, then failure is never disproof, only justification. A harbor, miracle, ceremony aligns timing with tides and weather. The public sees calm after storm and hears sacred interpretation. The emperor stands serene beside charts the crowd cannot read. The narrator explains how expertise becomes prophecy when methods are hidden. Coordination can look like heaven, and heaven can be used to demand more obedience. The camera-like narration returns to a palace network model, courts, schools, granaries, forts, linked like a single organism. This is the mandate's real body, institutions. The emperor stands at the center, isolated by empty space. While priests sanctify bureaucracy, the narrator delivers the thesis. The heavenly claim survives because it is built into daily systems. In a quiet retirement room, power collapses into paper, blank pages, sealed letters, and folded maps replace armies. A guard silhouette implies surveillance never ends. The narrator shows the final transformation, when authority fades. The mandate becomes legacy management. The ruler seeks control of the story because the story may outlive the throne. In a legacy workshop, scribes assemble an authorized past. Seals, packets, and controlled scroll cases imply editing as governance. Priests sanctify the writing process. The narrator states plainly, if the archive decides what survives, the heavens will always seem to have approved. Destiny can be manufactured after the fact, then taught as ancient truth. A ruined border town becomes a moral lesson rather than an administrative failure. Priests frame devastation as punishment elsewhere. The ruler stands by the map. Calm, the narrator explains blame redirection. If ruin is cosmic correction, leaders avoid responsibility, and the public is pushed toward obedience as redemption rather than toward reform as prevention. A fortress hall merges faith and enforcement. Oaths are holy. Pay is structured. Promotion is ritualized. The emperor stands above, distant and calm. The narrator emphasizes that the mandate becomes strongest when obedience is moralized. If disobedience is sin, then resistance is not merely dangerous, it is shameful. A storm-battered harbor promenade becomes a scene of controlled generosity. Relief permits, tokens, and measurements are displayed like mercy in numbered portions. The emperor watches, priests bless. The narrator highlights how catastrophe becomes a legitimacy engine. The ruler's presence is framed as salvation, and the system expands its reach under the language of protection. A grand courtyard model reappears, linking every institution into a single silent proof. The emperor stands at the center, isolated. Priests sanctify the machinery. The narrator repeats the hard conclusion. The mandate's power is not supernatural, it is infrastructural, built from controlled knowledge. Ritual theater, selective mercy, and restricted access. A tribute road and census station show people counted, labeled, and measured. Tokens stand in for identity, weights stand in for value. The emperor stands near the map, calm as if lives are figures in a ledger. The narrator explains how counting becomes control, when identity is administered. Belief becomes a requirement of existence within the system. A quarry transport dock turns stone into legitimacy. Labor is still, guarded, and sanctified. The emperor's calm beside the canal map implies inevitability. The narrator reveals the cost behind monuments. Ore is expensive, and sometimes paid for in silence and exhaustion. Yet the finished stone will later be used as proof of divine favor. A coin exchange house shows economic pain disguised as destiny. People carry sacks, Officials weigh, priests bless. The emperor stands near subtle changes in coin purity. The narrator explains how monetary manipulation is protected by sacred narrative, when value shifts. Leaders blame heaven's timing and punish disorder, directing anger away from the center. A Forest Road ambush memorial converts violence into justification. Guards control the site, priests sanctify the warning, the emperor stands by a route map. Calm, the narrator explains the pattern. Fear of chaos becomes permission for greater control. Tragedy becomes proof that the chosen ruler must tighten the grip for safety. A marriage alliance hall turns intimacy into strategy and strategy into destiny. Sealed packets and tokens sit like silent bargains. Priests sanctify the arrangement. The emperor stands near an unlabeled family chart. Calm as if bloodlines are heaven's design. The narrator shows how the mandate uses kinship to reduce rivals while calling it harmony. A ship departure key repeats the lesson. Expansion is framed as heaven's will. Logistics are measured. Priests bless. The emperor stands above under a canopy. The narrator warns that sacred framing dissolves accountability. When voyagers succeed, destiny is praised. When they fail, destiny is invoked as trial, and the cycle continues untouched. A teacher appointment chamber reveals staffing as ideology. Candidates wait. Seals and packets decide. Priests bless selection. The emperor stands near the district map. Calm, the narrator explains how the mandate reproduces. If teachers and clerks are chosen for loyalty to the story becomes the environment children breathe, and dissent becomes unfamiliar. A lighthouse signal trial turns coordination into wonder. Scholars measure, priests sanctify, guards restrict access. The emperor stands near the rail. Calm, the narrator explains the illusion. When methods are hidden, planned timing looks like miracle. People do not need to see heaven speak. They only need to see ceremonies align with events they cannot explain. The batch closes with a massive corridor model linking temples, courts, schools, archives, granaries, ports, and forts. The emperor stands at the far end beneath a canopy, isolated by distance and silence. The narrator ends part 1 with the central claim. Heaven's mandate persists because it is built into systems that control meaning, manage fear, and reward obedience, until destiny feels like the only language left. The Dawn Hilltop Census Station returns as the Empire's quiet heartbeat. Villagers stand behind rope boundaries. Baskets empty, faces still, while officials arrange standardized weights. Sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens like identity itself has been broken into measurable pieces. Priests burn incense beside bowls of ash and water, blessing the act of counting as cosmic order rather than human control. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled district map weighted by stones. Calm as if people are simply figures in a sacred ledger. The narrator explains that the mandate becomes strongest when it becomes administrative routine. If the state can measure you, it can define you, and once identity is defined by permission, belief becomes a requirement of existence. At a river quarry transport dock, barges sit motionless and stone blocks pile high like frozen waves of labor. Workers stand still with tools at their feet. Guards control the gangplanks as if movement itself is a privilege. Officials at a foreman table display standardized weights, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens in neat piles that suggest quotas and rations. While priests sanctify extraction as duty, Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beside an unlabeled canal map. Calm as if engineering is proof of heaven's favor. The narrator warns that monuments often become the evidence people accept, even when the cost is hidden behind distance, silence, and ritual. In a silent provincial coin exchange house, citizens wait behind ropes holding small sacks, while calibrated scales and standardized weights transform anxiety into numbers. Sealed pouches and unmarked tokens sit like quiet fees, and incense turns economic pain into moral order. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near trays of coins with subtle differences in tone and purity. Calm as if value shifts are not policy but destiny. The narrator reveals the trick: when money changes and people suffer, the mandate language blames heaven's timing or the people's disorder, protecting the center from accountability and making reform feel like rebellion against fate. Along a Forest Road ambush memorial, broken carts and scattered supplies lie in stillness, transformed into a controlled lesson rather than uncontrolled tragedy. Guards form rigid lines, and priests bless the site beside ash and water bowls. Framing violence as omen and warning. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled route map weighted by stones. Calm as if insecurity itself is a tool, the narrator explains that fear is not merely endured, it is harvested when danger feels real. The public accepts tighter control as protection, and protection is narrated as heaven's demand. In a candlelit palace marriage alliance hall, nobles stand frozen in symmetrical lines beside sealed packets and unmarked seals, while blank tablets wait to record a new, inevitable, kinship. Sealed pouches and tokens sit stacked like quiet dowries and loyalty purchases. Priests sanctify the union as destiny. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the table's head near an unlabeled family chart. Calm as if bloodlines are heaven's architecture, the narrator points out that mandate myths often lean on lineage not because lineage proves anything, but because continuity feels comforting, making strategy look like cosmic design. At a dawn ship departure quay, sailors and soldiers stand motionless beside coiled ropes and stacked barrels, while officials place an unlabeled sea chart under stones beside compasses and weighted permits. Priests bless the departure as fate and the crowd remains behind ropes, allowed to see but not to question. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy above the dock, calm as if expansion cannot be debated. The narrator explains how destiny language converts ambition into inevitability, if the voyage succeeds. The ruler is chosen, if it fails. The people are told it was a test, either way, the mandate survives. In a provincial teacher appointment chamber, candidates wait behind a rope line while officials sort sealed packets, seals, and pouches like belief itself is being assigned by paperwork. A calendar wheel and compass sit nearby, suggesting standardized instruction delivered like uniform law. Priests bless the selections as heaven's guidance. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled district map, calm as if education is merely administration. The narrator explains that the mandate becomes durable when it is staffed, if teachers and clerks are chosen for loyalty to the narrative. The next generation inherits destiny as common sense. A Night Harbor lighthouse signal trial shows stacked firewood prepared for a beacon, instruments arranged with precision, and guards controlling who can witness the timing. Scholars and priests stand rigid around a compass and sand timer on an unlabeled sea chart, implying calculation hidden behind ceremony. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the rail, calm as coordination becomes miracle. The narrator emphasizes that prediction can be disguised as prophecy, when methods are concealed. Planned alignment looks like heaven's response, and awe becomes a shield against questions. In a storm-damaged granary inspection hall, cracked jars and broken beams stand as silent proof of vulnerability, yet the scene is framed like sacred restoration. Officials display sealed jars, standardized weights, and ration tokens. Guards keep distance. Priests bless the recovery as cosmic order. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled granary plan, calm as if collapse is a test. The narrator explains how mandate grows during crisis, relief becomes surveillance, gratitude becomes obedience, and the ruler's care expands control while appearing compassionate. A dawn prison release corridor turns freedom into a controlled spectacle. Prisoners stand still in rope lanes, guards form rigid walls, officials hold seals, packets, and tokens like keys to human futures. Priests bless release as divine mercy. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a dais, calm as if gates prove selection. The narrator explains the psychological binding. Selective mercy creates dependence, because people learn that survival and freedom arrive by permission, then mistake permission for destiny. A Dusk River festival barge glows with lanterns that hang motionless over still water, while boats align in perfect formation like the empire itself. Priests bless the celebration. Officials collect donations in tokens. Guards control sightlines. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy on the central boat, calm as if joy belongs to him. The narrator warns that festival can be propaganda without words. Choreographed happiness becomes evidence of harmony, even if suffering exists beyond the river's light. At a night desert border fort, towers and supply crates sit under a pale sky, and soldiers stand frozen beside sealed packets and an unlabeled route map. Priests bless threat as omen and duty. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the table, calm as fear becomes justification. The narrator explains that insecurity is an engine. When people feel surrounded, they accept more control. and the mandate narrative turns militarization into sacred necessity. In a sealed letter diplomacy chamber, envoys hold sealed packets while unmarked seals and blank tablets wait to translate negotiation into heaven's plan. Guards block exits, controlling information. Priests sanctify compromise as destiny. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled map, calm as if outcomes were foreseen. The narrator explains the mandate's flexibility. Even concessions can be narrated as proof, because interpretation is controlled long before the public hears anything. A dawn public oath renewal square shows citizens arranged in strict rows behind rope boundaries, with guards shaping the geometry of obedience. Seals, tokens, and weights sit on tables like rewards for loyalty. Priests burn incense beside ash and water bowls, sanctifying participation. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a platform, calm as if unity is natural. The narrator notes that repetition becomes reality when loyalty is rehearsed publicly. Belief becomes habit, and habit becomes proof. The corridor map room returns. Cord and stone models linking courts, temples, schools, archives, granaries, ports, and forts into a single silent machine. Officials hold sealed dispatch packets. Priests sanctify administration. Guards hold distance lines. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the far end beneath a canopy, isolated by emptiness. The narrator summarizes, the mandate does not float in the sky, it lives in institutions that control access, manage fear, and convert routine into obedience. A dusk mountain fortress balcony reveals banners hanging limp, smoke faintly rising in distant valleys, and priests poised over ash and water bowls as if judging the world's purity. Guards control the narrow paths to the balcony. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands by an unlabeled border map, calm as danger becomes confirmation. The narrator explains that when insecurity grows, certainty is demanded, and the ruler who claims cosmic certainty gains power precisely because people are afraid to live without it. In a candlelit merchant guild hall, traders sit rigidly while officials arrange permits, tokens, and weights like a silent tax language. Priests sanctify regulation as moral harmony. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a raised platform beside an unlabeled trade map, calm as if commerce exists by his blessing. The narrator shows the mandate's economic grip. When permission controls prosperity, loyalty becomes a business decision, and the sacred story makes dependence feel righteous. A dawn prison courtyard displays detainees separated into groups behind rope lanes. A judgment table holds unmarked seals and blank tablets, and priests sanctify punishment as purification. Guards stand rigid, turning space into intimidation. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a small dais, calm as if confinement proves divine choice. The narrator warns that coercion can be disguised as virtue when it is framed as protecting cosmic order rather than protecting the ruler. In a misty forest sanctuary, priests and scholars gather around a calendar wheel and compass beside sealed packets, while citizens watch from behind ropes at a distance. Guards block side paths, making mystery unavoidable. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy in the clearing, calm as if nature itself chooses him. The narrator explains that restricted access is the mandate's best ally. When people cannot verify, they fill gaps with belief, and belief becomes stronger than evidence. A dry steppe ration camp shows a thin line of citizens holding empty bowls. Officials measure scarcity with weights and tokens. Priests bless deprivation as discipline. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a ridge near an unlabeled route map, calm as if suffering is sacred trial. The narrator reveals the brutal logic. Permission-based survival produces gratitude and obedience, and the mandate narrative turns pain into proof that only the chosen can manage the test. A palace festival stage frames choreographed happiness as evidence of harmony. Dancers and musicians are posed like icons. Incense drifts, and guards control entrances. The emperor stands on a dais near sealed pouches, calm as if joy is scheduled and funded. The narrator notes that celebration can be weaponized. When public life is filled with rituals of unity, people forget to ask what was traded to afford the spectacle. A sealed archive transfer corridor shows clerks pushing carts of unmarked scroll cases under torchlight. Guards at every doorway, and a supervisor table of seals and packets. Priests bless the movement of memory as purification. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled provincial map, calm as if history is territory. The narrator makes it explicit: if archives are controlled, the past becomes adjustable, and the mandate becomes unfalsifiable because competing stories cannot survive. A Dawn naval oath platform turns danger into devotion. Sailors stand in ranks. Coiled ropes and barrels become props of duty. Permits, weights, and tokens sit beside a compass on an unlabeled sea chart. Priests sanctify risk. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy, calm as if voyages are heaven's mission. The narrator explains how mandate mobilizes bodies, when dissent is framed as opposing fate. The state can spend lives with less resistance. In a night eclipse chamber, a roof opening frames the moon's shadow while scholars measure with instruments the public cannot understand. Sealed packets wait, implying interpretation prepared before the sky even changes. Guards control entry. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the instruments, calm as prediction becomes prophecy. The narrator explains the conversion. Science becomes miracle when access is restricted, and miracle becomes legitimacy when the ruler stands beside it. A capstone palace courtyard model returns, linking every institution into a single silent proof. Officials, priests, and guards hold their positions like the empire's nervous system. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the center, calm as the system surrounds him. The narrator concludes this section: the mandate is not one ceremony, it is an ecosystem that turns administration, ritual, and fear into a single language of inevitability. A mountain pass checkpoint shows carts halted, water jars stacked, tents folded, and guards deciding who crosses. Priests bless restriction as protection. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beside an unlabeled pass map, calm as if geography itself proves his right. The narrator explains that choke points are political theology, when passage is permission. The ruler becomes the gatekeeper of life's possibilities, and the mandate story makes gates feel moral. A flood relief depot repeats the pattern of compassion as control. Citizens hold empty jars, officials distribute measured aid, priests sanctify the act, guards enforce distance. The emperor stands above near an unlabeled river plan, calm as if control is kindness. The narrator warns that relief systems can quietly become surveillance systems, and gratitude can become obedience. A mint inspection chamber shows calibrated scales, coin trays, quotas, and penalties. Priests sanctify value as cosmic balance. The emperor stands near purity shifts, calm as if policy is fate. The narrator explains that economic manipulation becomes safer when framed as divine necessity. Pain becomes a test, and those who complain can be labeled disorderly rather than reasonable. A frontier oath chapel shows soldiers lined beneath arches, oath rods and bowls of ash and water placed like sacred instruments. Pay and promotion sit beside tokens. The emperor stands above, calm as loyalty becomes holiness. The narrator emphasizes that moralized obedience is harder to break than fear-based obedience, because people begin to police themselves. A palace scribe school trains bureaucracy into belief. Blank tablets wait, scrolls are tied shut, guards control doors. The emperor stands near seals and pouches, calm as if staffing is destiny. The narrator explains, when the system hires loyal interpreters, the mandate enforces itself through everyday administration, requiring less visible force. A night prophecy pavilion shows astronomical discs and sealed interpretations, citizens held at distance behind ropes, and guards blocking side paths. The emperor stands under a canopy, calm as if heaven speaks only through his ceremony. The narrator notes that the mandate renews itself by manufacturing moments when the sky appears to agree. A river bridge inspection reveals cracks and patched sections. Officials display budgets, priests bless repairs. The emperor stands near an unlabeled river map, calm as if failure can be spiritualized. The narrator shows how material decay is reinterpreted as cosmic anger rather than neglect, shifting attention away from accountability. An archive reading room shows scholars behind ropes, guards controlling access, and scroll carts arranged like controlled memory. The emperor stands at the doorway, calm as if history is territory. The narrator states the rule: when only approved readers can see records, only approved interpretations can survive. A coastal quarantine gate again frames restriction as sacred protection. Permits, herbs, sealed jars, and tokens sit on a table. The emperor stands above near an unlabeled harbor plan, calm as fear expands power. The narrator explains that crises make mandates stronger because people accept control as safety without realizing how rarely power returns what it gains. A statue refurbishment workshop shows artisans repairing symbols to keep continuity visible. Budgets and approvals sit beside seals and pouches. Priests sanctify the restoration. The emperor stands near the statue base, calm as if permanence is proof. The narrator notes that even when reality fractures, symbols can be repaired, and repaired symbols train the public to believe stability still exists. A succession corridor shows advisors divided into tense clusters near sealed doors. Packets piled like competing futures, and tokens stacked like bought loyalty. Priests sanctify alignment, guards watch. The emperor stands at the end, calm yet isolated. The narrator explains that mandate myths intensify at succession because fear is highest. The story must drown out the truth of factional struggle. A rebellion aftermath street shows scorched beams and broken stalls. Relief and punishment tools sit on the same table. Priests sanctify crackdown as restoration, guards control movement. The emperor stands on a balcony near an unlabeled city plan, calm as if unrest is a diagram. The narrator explains how rebellion becomes proof, disorder justifies more control, and the ruler claims only the chosen can restore harmony. An exile coastline residence shows blank pages and sealed letters replacing armies. A guard silhouette proves surveillance never ends. The emperor stands by the desk, calm as narrative becomes the last territory. The narrator explains that the mandate can persist without power if the ruler still controls interpretation, because legacy can outlive defeat. A ceremonial corridor model returns, connecting institutions across tiled floors like the skeleton of inevitability. The emperor stands beneath a canopy, calm as the system repeats itself. The narrator emphasizes that the mandate is not a single claim. It is the default explanation produced by an entire administrative environment. A high-walled coastal court of appeals shows judges, seals, and blank tablets, citizens held behind ropes, guards controlling speech by posture. Priests bless judgment as cosmic correction. The emperor stands to the side near an unlabeled district map, calm as if justice is destiny. The narrator warns that when courts become sacred theater, accountability becomes sacrilege. A dawn caravan departure plaza shows wagons lined like a military diagram. Officials checking permits, priests blessing mission, and guards controlling lanes. The emperor stands near an unlabeled route map, calm as if expansion is a command from the sky. The narrator explains how destiny framing makes hardship easier to impose and blame harder to assign. A silent bridge toll gateway shows travelers paused, guards at both ends, and officials measuring passage with tokens and weights. Priests sanctify restriction as harmony. The emperor stands on a platform near an unlabeled river map, calm as infrastructure becomes theology. The narrator notes that controlling crossings means controlling trade, migration, and news, power disguised as order. A torchlit palace chapel of forgiveness shows petitioners kneeling behind ropes while officials arrange seals and tokens like the terms of mercy. Priests bless pardon as divine compassion. The emperor stands on a dais, calm as if mercy proves he is chosen. The narrator explains that selective kindness binds people tighter than fear alone, because gratitude becomes dependence. A twilight ceremonial plaza shows citizens seated in ordered tiers, guards shaping space, priests sanctifying the atmosphere, and tables of weights and tokens arranged like offerings of governance. The emperor stands under a canopy, calm as silence becomes proof. The narrator concludes that public life is designed to make destiny feel like the only possible language, because everything else is fenced off. The segment closes with the system's thesis made visible again, a vast network model linking temples, courts, schools, archives, granaries, ports, and forts. Officials hold sealed packets, priests burn incense, guards keep distance, and Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the center, calm and isolated. The narrator ends part 2 with the core conclusion. The mandate survives because it is engineered through controlled knowledge, controlled access, selective reward, and managed fear, until belief becomes routine and routine becomes reality. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more content like this. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. At dawn, a tribute caravan road appears again, wagons frozen in a neat line as if wealth itself has been trained to move politely. Crates, jars, and sacks are stacked in disciplined geometry, while officials sit at a roadside table holding standardized weights, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens that turn tribute into a measured ritual. Priests stand rigid with censers, blessing extraction as cosmic circulation. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled route map weighted by stones, calm as if the road is a vein feeding destiny. The narrator explains that mandates are nourished materially, tribute flows inward, and legitimacy is broadcast outward. So obedience feels like participation in heaven's economy. In a Highland border schoolhouse, children sit motionless on stone benches facing an instructor holding a blank tablet and a tied scroll. A calendar wheel and compass rest on a side table, hinting at time and direction being used to structure belief. Guards stand rigid at the doorway, turning education into controlled passage. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the back near sealed pouches and an unmarked seal stamp, calm as if funding is fate. The narrator highlights a deeper truth: the mandate survives because it is taught early, before skepticism becomes habit, and because the state staffs the classroom with loyalty, not curiosity. A torchlit palace rumor court shows courtiers frozen in whispering poses, guards at corridor ends, and a central table holding sealed packets, unmarked seals, blank tablets, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens arranged like tools for buying silence. Priests stand rigid with censers, framing secrecy as sacred protection. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the table's edge near ashen water bowls, calm as if scandal can be purified. The narrator explains that mystery is not always accidental. It can be designed, because when information is scarce, people depend on official interpretation, and dependence strengthens the aura of destiny. A winter frontier funeral field holds mourners in spaced lines beside a shallow pit bordered by stones. Priests stand rigid at a small table holding ashen water, while guards maintain fixed positions around the perimeter, controlling grief as if it were security. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands motionless on a ridge near an unlabeled map, calm as if loss is another statistic. The narrator emphasizes the mandate's cruelty: death is framed as sacred sacrifice. And because mourning is ritualized under surveillance, grief becomes quiet, and quiet grief is presented as evidence of order. A sun-bleached inland market checkpoint freezes merchants behind rope barriers beside stacked baskets and sealed crates. Officials sit at a toll table with standardized weights, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens in layered piles, implying that movement is priced and monitored. Priests sanctify the checkpoint as harmony. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled trade route map, calm as if restriction is righteousness. The narrator explains how mandates hide economic throttling, permits and fees are framed as protection, while the real effect is extraction and surveillance that concentrates wealth and obedience at the center. A moonlit cliff pilgrimage platform shows pilgrims seated in silent rows behind rope boundaries. Priests stand rigid around an altar table holding water and ash bowls and an unmarked ceremonial band. Guards block the narrow stair approach, forcing distance into devotion. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a plain canopy at the platform's highest point, calm as if elevation proves selection. The narrator explains that physical separation becomes spiritual authority when people cannot approach, they cannot verify, and the gap is filled by awe that feels like heaven itself. A sealed door crisis council chamber reveals advisors standing around unlabeled maps, sealed packets, and blank tablets arranged like instruments of interpretation. A side table holds sealed pouches and unmarked tokens stacked neatly, implying that loyalty is reinforced during emergencies. Priests sanctify the meeting as sacred deliberation. Guards block every exit. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the table's head near ashen water bowls, calm as if crisis is ordained. The narrator states the mandate's shield: if every disaster is heaven's test, then failures become lessons, not liabilities, and secrecy becomes virtue. A Dawn Harbor miracle ceremony shows ships anchored in calm water while crowds stand behind rope barriers along the quay. Priests stand rigid near an altar table holding an astronomical disc, compass, and sealed packets, implying timing was calculated. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a platform beside an unlabeled sea chart, calm as if the sea obeys him. The narrator explains the conversion: prediction and coordination become miracle when methods are hidden. Miracle becomes legitimacy when the ruler stands beside it. A palace courtyard model appears as a single still network of power, cords and stones linking schools, courts, temples, granaries, archives, ports, and forts. Tables display standardized weights, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens arranged with perfect precision. Officials hold sealed dispatch packets, priests burn incense, guards enforce distance lines. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the model's center beneath a plain canopy. Calm and isolated, the narrator summarizes the thesis: the mandate persists not because heaven speaks clearly, but because the ruler builds an ecosystem that controls interpretation, rewards compliance, manages crisis, and restricts access, making destiny feel inevitable. At dusk, a mountain fortress balcony overlooks a silent valley. Banners hanging limp, smoke faint in the distance. Priests stand rigid around a stone table with ash and water bowls, as if judging the world's purity. Guards control the narrow paths. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled border map. Calm as danger becomes proof. The narrator explains that insecurity feeds the mandate. People accept cosmic certainty when they are afraid of living without it. In a candlelit merchant guild hall, traders sit in strict rows while officials display standardized weights, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens as layered licenses. Priests sanctify regulation as morality. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a raised platform near an unlabeled trade map. Calm as if prosperity is permission, the narrator notes that mandates capture private wealth by controlling access, when survival and success require stamps and tokens. Loyalty becomes a rational choice. A dawn prison courtyard shows detainees behind rope lanes. A judgment table stacked with unmarked seals and blank tablets, and priests burning incense beside ash and water bowls. Guards form rigid walls. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a dais, calm as if confinement proves divine selection. The narrator warns, coercion becomes righteousness when framed as protecting cosmic order, because fear can be disguised as virtue. A misty forest sanctuary holds priests and scholars around an unmarked calendar wheel and compass beside sealed packets like revelations. Citizens watch from behind ropes. Guards block side paths. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy in the clearing, calm as if nature chooses him. The narrator explains how mystery sustains belief, when the public cannot verify what happens in sacred space. They depend on official interpretation, and dependence is the mandate's foundation. A dry steppe ration camp shows citizens holding empty bowls in a thin line. Officials measure scarcity with weights and tokens. Priests sanctify deprivation as discipline. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a ridge near an unlabeled route map. Calm as hunger becomes stagecraft. The narrator reveals how hardship becomes legitimacy. Survival through permission creates gratitude. Gratitude creates obedience, and obedience is narrated as heaven-approved order. A palace festival stage glows with choreographed joy, dancers and musicians posed like icons. Offerings arranged symmetrically, incense rising in still air. Guards control entrances. Citizens remain behind rope barriers. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a dais near sealed pouches, calm as if happiness is scheduled. The narrator warns that public celebration can function as silent propaganda, training people to associate the ruler's presence with good seasons, even when suffering is merely pushed out of sight. A sealed archive transfer corridor shows clerks pushing carts of unmarked scroll cases under torchlight. Guards stand at every doorway. A supervisor table holds unmarked seals and sealed packets like classified truths. Priests bless the movement of memory. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled provincial map, calm as if history is territory. The narrator makes it plain, when archives are curated, destiny becomes unfalsifiable because alternative stories cannot survive. A dawn naval oath platform shows sailors lined beside coiled ropes and stacked barrels. Officials sit at a table with an unlabeled sea chart, compass, weights, and tokens like contracts. Priests sanctify risk as duty. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy, calm as if death can be spent for destiny. The narrator explains that mandate language mobilizes bodies by making dissent feel immoral, not merely dangerous. A night eclipse chamber reveals scholars and priests around an astronomical disk and sand timer. The roof opening shows the moon's shadow beginning. Sealed packets sit ready, implying interpretation prepared in advance. Guards control entry. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the instruments. Calm as prediction becomes prophecy. The narrator explains how science turns into heaven's voice when the public is kept outside the room. A colossal ceremonial corridor shows a cord and stone network model linking temples, courts, schools, archives, granaries, ports, and forts into one machine. Tables hold weights and tokens, officials hold sealed dispatch packets, priests sanctify administration. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the far end beneath a canopy. Calm and isolated, the narrator concludes that the mandate is not a claim, it is an environment built to make the claim feel like common sense. A dawn hilltop census station returns with villagers queued behind ropes. Tokens replacing identity, weights replacing dignity, priests bless the act of counting. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled district map. Calm as if people are numbers in destiny's ledger, the narrator explains the hidden power. When the state measures you, it owns the categories of your life, and belief becomes part of your paperwork. A river quarry transport dock returns with stone blocks stacked like frozen waves. Guards control gangplanks, quotas sit in tokens, incense sanctifies extraction. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled canal map. Calm as monuments become evidence. The narrator stresses that awe is engineered. When people see grand structures, they assume heaven favored the ruler, rarely seeing the exhaustion that built them. A silent coin exchange house returns with citizens holding sacks, officials weighing purity, and priests turning pain into morality. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near coin trays. Calm as if devaluation is fate. The narrator notes how mandate language redirects anger, suffering becomes a test, and reform becomes disorder. A Forest Road ambush memorial returns. Guarded and sanctified, Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands by an unlabeled route map. Calm as fear becomes justification. The narrator explains how tragedy is converted into policy permission, more checkpoints, more surveillance, more control, each framed as sacred protection. A candlelit marriage alliance hall returns with sealed packets and tokens arranged like a silent contract. Priests sanctify the union, guards hold distance lines. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled family chart. Calm as if kinship proves inevitability. The narrator emphasizes that continuity is a weapon. If power looks inherited, it looks less like conquest. A dawn ship departure key returns with charts, compasses, permits, and incense. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands above the dock. Calm as if expansion is ordained. The narrator explains the mandate's immunity. Success proves destiny, failure proves trial. Either way, the story wins. A provincial teacher appointment chamber returns with seals and pouches deciding who will shape minds. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled map. Calm as staffing becomes ideology. The narrator explains, the mandate survives because it hires its own translators and promotes those who repeat the approved version. A night lighthouse signal trial returns with timing instruments and controlled access. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the rail. Calm as coordination becomes wonder. The narrator points out that people do not need proof. They only need synchronized spectacle they cannot explain. A storm-damaged granary inspection returns with relief permits and sanctified restoration. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled plan. Calm as crisis becomes expansion. The narrator warns that emergency relief often becomes permanent control, because fear rarely returns power to the public once it has been surrendered. A dawn prison release corridor returns with mercy measured by seals and tokens. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on the dais. Calm as freedom becomes permission. The narrator explains the deeper bind. Gratitude becomes dependence, and dependence becomes belief. A twilight ceremonial plaza returns with ordered tiers of citizens. Fixed guard lines, incense, and governance displayed like an offering. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy. Calm as silence becomes proof. The narrator says the mandate's genius is not in speaking louder, but in making alternative voices invisible. A dawn palace garden audience shows petitioners behind ropes, officials handling seals and tokens, and priests sanctifying access as harmony. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy. Calm as intimacy is rationed. The narrator explains how controlled mercy creates loyalty, when the ruler grants small favors through heavy gates. Gratitude becomes obedience. A foggy mountain pass checkpoint shows halted carts, guards, permits, and incense. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands by an unlabeled pass map. Calm as choke points become theology. The narrator emphasizes that controlling passage controls news and trade, and the mandate story makes control feel moral. A provincial flood relief depot shows citizens with empty jars, officials measuring aid, and priests blessing restriction as protection. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands above near an unlabeled river plan. Calm as care becomes surveillance. The narrator warns that disaster can turn dependence into habit. A candlelit mint inspection chamber shows coin trays and quotas. Priests sanctify value, guards control entry. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands calm beside purity shifts. And the narrator explains how economic manipulation hides behind destiny language so that pain feels unavoidable rather than engineered. A dusk frontier oath chapel shows soldiers lined beneath archers. Incense sanctifying obedience, tokens implying pay and promotion. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands above. Calm as loyalty becomes holiness. The narrator notes that moralized obedience is the mandate's strongest armor. A quiet palace school of scribes shows trainees with blank tablets, instructors with tied scrolls, guards at doors. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near seals and pouches. Calm as bureaucracy becomes belief. The narrator explains that the mandate enforces itself when administrators treat it as unquestionable fact. A night prophecy pavilion shows astronomical discs, prepared interpretations, citizens held behind ropes. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands under a canopy. Calm as heaven's voice is monopolized. The narrator emphasizes that restricted access turns prediction into prophecy, and prophecy turns politics into inevitability. A Dawn River bridge inspection shows cracks and patched stone, budgets stacked like tokens, incense blessing repairs. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled river map. Calm as decay becomes spiritual narrative. The narrator points out how material failure is reframed as cosmic anger, protecting leaders from blame. A torchlit archive reading room shows scholars behind ropes and guards controlling who can look at memory. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the doorway. Calm as history is territory. The narrator explains that when only approved readers exist, only approved conclusions can spread. A dusk coastal quarantine gate shows travelers behind ropes, permits and herbs on tables. Incense blessing restriction. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands above near an unlabeled harbor plan. Calm as fear expands power. The narrator warns that emergencies are the mandate's favorite soil. A Dawn statue refurbishment workshop shows artisans repairing symbols, budgets and seals approving the work. Priests sanctifying continuity. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the statue base. Calm as permanence becomes proof. The narrator notes that when reality fractures, the state repairs icons to keep belief intact. A night palace succession corridor shows advisors split into factions, packets piled like competing futures, tokens like bought loyalty. Priests sanctify alignment, guards watch. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands isolated, calm but exposed. The narrator explains that the mandate story intensifies at succession because fear is loudest there, and the story must drown out uncertainty. A Dawn provincial rebellion aftermath street shows scorched beams, relief and punishment on the same table, guards controlling intersections, incense framing crackdown as restoration. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a balcony near an unlabeled city plan. Calm as disorder becomes proof. The narrator says rebellion is turned into justification, more control is framed as salvation. A dusk exile coastline residence shows blank pages, sealed letters, an unlabeled map, and a guard silhouette implying constant surveillance. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the desk. Calm as narrative becomes the last territory. The narrator explains that when power is gone, the mandate becomes legacy management, because controlling interpretation is the final form of rule. A colossal throne corridor closes this section with a cord and stone model linking courts, temples, schools, archives, granaries, ports, and forts into one silent machine. Tables display weights and tokens, priests sanctify administration, guards enforce distance. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the far end beneath a canopy, calm and isolated. The narrator ends part 3 with the hard conclusion: the mandate endures not as miracle, but as engineered systems that control meaning. access, rewards, and fear, until destiny becomes the only explanation the public is allowed to live with. A Dawn Palace garden audience reappears in sharper detail, hedges trimmed into strict geometry. Fountains frozen mid-splash, petitioners held behind rope boundaries like they are part of the landscaping. Officials sit at a low table arranging unmarked seals, blank tablets, sealed packets, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens in tidy piles that quietly decide who receives access. Priests burn incense beside ash and water bowls, sanctifying the conversation before it begins. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a plain canopy, calm as if intimacy is destiny. The narrator explains that the mandate can be reinforced through controlled closeness, mercy is rationed through gatekeepers, and gratitude becomes loyalty because the ruler appears generous while the system remains unapproachable. At a foggy mountain pass checkpoint, carts stand halted beside stacked water jars and folded tents. Guards form rigid lines around a checkpoint table where standardized weights, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens are arranged like the grammar of movement. Priests sanctify restriction as protection, turning delay into virtue. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled pass map weighted by stones, calm as if geography itself proves his right. The narrator highlights the hidden theology of choke points. Controlling passage means controlling trade, migration, and news, and the mandate story makes that control feel moral rather than strategic. A silent provincial flood relief depot shows citizens with empty jars and tired bundles waiting behind ropes, while officials distribute measured aid using sealed jars, standardized weights, sealed pouches, and tokens as ration permits. Guards enforce distance, priests bless relief as sacred restoration. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a raised platform near an unlabeled river plan, calm as if control is compassion. The narrator warns that crises expand mandates, relief becomes surveillance, gratitude becomes obedience, and the state gains reach by presenting permission as care. In a candlelit mint inspection chamber, coin trays and calibrated scales sit like a moral courtroom for value itself. Officials display standardized weights, sealed pouches, and unmarked tokens as quotas and penalties, while priests sanctify economic control as cosmic balance. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the trays, calm as if devaluation is destiny. The narrator explains how the mandate shields financial manipulation when money shifts and people suffer. The story blames heaven's timing or public disorder, preserving the ruler's aura while redirecting anger away from policy. A dusk frontier oath chapel shows soldiers lined beneath stone arches, oath rods placed beside ash and water bowls. A nearby table holds sealed pouches and tokens arranged like pay and promotion, making loyalty both sacred and transactional. Priests bless obedience as purity, guards maintain rigid formation. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a dais, calm as if loyalty is holiness. The narrator emphasizes that mandates endure when enforcement is moralized, if obedience becomes virtue. People police themselves, and fear can operate without being named. A quiet palace school of scribes shows trainees seated at narrow desks with blank tablets, instructors holding tied scrolls, and guards controlling the doors like knowledge is contraband. A side table holds a calendar wheel and compass, implying standardized truth. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near unmarked seals and sealed pouches, calm as if staffing is fate. The narrator reveals the mandate's deepest layer: if bureaucracy is trained to treat legitimacy as cosmic fact, the system enforces belief through paperwork rather than constant violence. A night prophecy pavilion is arranged as controlled wonder. Priests and scholars stand around an astronomical disk, sand timer, and plain circular chart without readable markings. Sealed packets wait in neat stacks, implying interpretations prepared in advance. Citizens watch from behind rope boundaries, guards block side paths. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy, calm as if heaven speaks only through his ceremony. The narrator explains how prediction becomes prophecy when access is restricted and the public is positioned to experience awe, not evidence. A Dawn River bridge inspection shows patched stone, visible cracks, and measuring rods laid beside stacked blocks. Officials sit at a table holding standardized weights, sealed pouches, and tokens arranged like maintenance budgets. Priests bless repairs as sacred harmony. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled river map, calm as if failure can be spiritualized. The narrator points to the mandate's escape route when infrastructure weakens. The story blames cosmic anger or moral decay, not neglect, turning material problems into spiritual obedience campaigns. A torchlit archive reading room reveals scholars seated behind ropes, supervised by guards, and a table of unmarked seals, blank tablets, sealed packets, and carts of unmarked scroll cases. Priests sanctify the space as purification of memory. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the doorway near an unlabeled provincial map. Calm as if history is territory, the narrator states the rule of mandated reality: if only approved readers can access records, only approved interpretations can circulate, and destiny becomes the only past the public is permitted to inherit. A dusk coastal quarantine gate shows travelers halted behind ropes. Inspection tables holding sealed jars, herbs, weights, sealed pouches, and tokens as entry permits. Priests bless restriction as heavenly guardianship, guards control distance. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a raised deck near an unlabeled harbor plan. Calm as fear expands authority. The narrator warns that emergencies are the mandate's favorite soil. People accept surveillance as safety, and what is gained in crisis is rarely surrendered afterward. In a dawn statue refurbishment workshop, artisans stand beside scaffolding and stone fragments, frozen mid-repair. A supervisor table holds unmarked seals, blank tablets, sealed packets, sealed pouches, and tokens arranged like budgets for memory. Priests sanctify restoration of icons. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the statue base, calm as if permanence equals proof. The narrator explains how symbols are maintained to conceal fractures, even when reality cracks. Monuments are repaired so continuity looks unbroken. A Night Palace succession corridor shows advisors split into two rigid clusters near sealed doors, while a long table holds sealed packets in separate piles, unmarked seals, and blank tablets arranged like competing futures. A chest of sealed pouches and tokens implies loyalty purchases during uncertainty. Priests bless alignment, guards watch. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the corridor's end, calm yet isolated. The narrator reveals the mandate's fragility at succession. Prophecy and ritual intensify to cover fear, and the heavenly plan is used to silence the truth of factional struggle. A dawn provincial rebellion aftermath street is charred and empty, with broken stalls and scorched beams frozen like a warning. Officials sit at a relief inspection table holding sealed jars, weights, sealed pouches, and tokens arranged like both permits and punishments. Guards control intersections. Priests sanctify crackdown as restoration of sacred order. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a balcony near an unlabeled city plan, calm as if unrest is a diagram. The narrator explains how rebellion becomes proof, disorder justifies tighter control, and the ruler claims only the chosen can restore harmony. A dusk exile coastline residence shows a simple room with a writing desk covered in blank pages, sealed letters, and an unlabeled folded map. Outside, a guard silhouette stands rigid, implying surveillance that outlives power. A companion figure holds a closed unmarked book. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the desk beside ash and water bowls, calm as if narrative is the last territory. The narrator explains that when armies are gone, mandate becomes story management. If the ruler controls legacy, defeat can still be narrated as destiny. A grand map room appears as a complete static machine. Cord and stone models connect temples, courts, schools, archives, granaries, ports, and forts across tiled floors. Tables hold standardized weights, sealed pouches, and tokens in disciplined piles. Officials hold sealed dispatch packets. Priests sanctify administration. Guards enforce distance lines. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the center, calm and isolated. The narrator restates the thesis: the mandate endures not as supernatural proof, but as engineered systems that control meaning, access, rewards, and fear until destiny becomes the default explanation. A dawn desert canal construction site shows stacked stones, wooden braces, sealed water jars, and motionless laborers under guard. Officials arrange weights, sealed pouches, and tokens like quotas and rations. Priests sanctify forced work as duty. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled canal plan, calm as if engineering proves heaven's favor. The narrator highlights the mandate's physical illusion. Infrastructure becomes evidence people can touch. while the human cost remains fenced behind ritual. A candlelit provincial court registry shows clerks with blank tablets and seals. Citizens behind ropes, and guards controlling approach. Priests bless paperwork as sacred order. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled district map, calm as if law is destiny. The narrator explains that mandates become daily life when every dispute requires permission. People stop arguing about justice and start chasing stamps, mistaking procedure for truth. A foggy sea cliff warning shrine shows pilgrims held at distance while priests and scholars stand around an astronomical disk and sealed packets of interpretation. Guards block narrow stairs, turning access into privilege. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy near the cliff edge, calm as if the horizon agrees. The narrator notes that sacred remoteness is a design. The farther the public is kept from details, the stronger mystery becomes, and mystery is the mandate's shelter. A dawn harvest tithe barn shows farmers queued with baskets while officials measure grain with standardized weights. Sealed pouches, and tokens in strict piles. Priests sanctify collection as cosmic balance. Guards enforce distance. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled farmland map, calm as if abundance belongs to heaven and the throne. The narrator explains how extraction is disguised as duty, payment becomes moral obligation, and hardship becomes lesson, turning resistance into sin. A night palace rumor suppression corridor shows courtiers frozen in anxious clusters. Guards at both ends, and a table stacked with sealed packets. Seals, blank tablets, pouches, and tokens, tools for buying silence and controlling records. Priests bless secrecy. Ash and water bowls imply purification of scandal. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands calm at the corridor's end. The narrator explains that mandates survive doubt by controlling what can be said, what can be stored, and what can be repeated until uncertainty collapses into the official story. A dusk medical quarantine chamber shows physicians and priests around sealed jars of herbs, blank tablets, and a water bowl, while guards control entry and citizens are held behind ropes. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near sealed packets implying prepared explanations of illness. The narrator warns that health crises expand mandates, restrictions become guardianship, surveillance becomes care, and fear makes obedience feel responsible. A dawn coastal shipyard contract platform shows workers beside planks and sealed tar jars while officials place an unlabeled sea chart. Compass, weights, pouches, and tokens like permits and wages. Priests sanctify construction as destiny. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands elevated, calm as expensive ambition becomes heaven's will. The narrator explains how sacred framing dissolves accountability, shortages become necessary sacrifice, and criticism becomes disloyalty. A twilight border treaty pavilion shows two delegations frozen across a long table holding sealed packets. Seals, weights, pouches, and tokens arranged into mirrored piles. Priests sanctify compromise, guards control distance. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled map, calm as if outcomes were ordained. The narrator shows the mandate's flexibility again. Even retreat can be narrated as destiny, preserving inevitability under any settlement. A night city gate surveillance lane shows merchants and travelers behind rope barriers while guards enforce a checkpoint table of weights, sealed pouches, and tokens in strict piles. Priests sanctify monitoring as harmony. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a balcony near an unlabeled street plan, calm as if the city is a diagram. The narrator explains how surveillance becomes normal when control is framed as protection. Silence is treated as proof of approval. A dawn execution and pardon platform shows prisoners and officials separated by rope lanes. Guards forming rigid corridors to a small stage. A table holds seals, blank tablets, packets, pouches, and tokens like instruments of fate. Priests sanctify judgment as purification. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands calm on the platform, as if life and death confirm divine choice. The narrator explains that mandates concentrate power by monopolizing mercy, binding obedience with fear and occasional relief. A dusk monument dedication avenue shows a new stone marker on a base. Citizens held behind ropes, guards controlling sightlines. Priests sanctify the symbol. Officials display budgets and tokens as memory management. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands calm on a platform, The narrator explains that monuments assert inevitability without argument, teaching people to experience authority as landscape and to treat doubt as unnatural. A candlelit archive vault ceiling shows clerks moving unmarked scroll cases toward a heavy door under guard. A supervisor table holds seals, blank tablets, and packets like classified truths. Priests bless purification of what will remain. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled map, calm as if memory is conquest. The narrator states that controlling history makes destiny undefeatable, if records are sealed. Alternative explanations cannot return. A dawn provincial teacher oath ceremony shows instructors lined beside desks and blank tablets while officials arrange seals, packets, and pouches like appointments. Priests sanctify education as destiny, guards control the doors. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled district map, calm as if belief is curriculum. The narrator explains how mandates reproduce, staffing choices become cultural future. A stormy sea harbor, miracle, proclamation shows ships at anchor under clearing clouds while crowds stand behind ropes. Priests surround an altar table with an astronomical disk, compass, sand timer, and sealed packets implying calculated timing. Guards control the view. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beside an unlabeled sea chart, calm as if calm was summoned. The narrator emphasizes coincidence management. Prediction becomes miracle when methods are hidden. The section closes again on a colossal map room network model linking temples, courts, schools, archives, granaries, ports, and forts. Tables of weights, pouches, and tokens sit like the empire's silent math. Officials hold dispatch packets, priests sanctify, guards enforce distance. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the center, calm and isolated. The narrator concludes that the mandate endures because it is engineered, meaning controlled. Access controlled, rewards rationed, fear managed, until destiny becomes the only story people can safely repeat. A pale dawn succession proclamation chamber shows advisors in rigid semicircles around sealed packets and blank tablets. A chest of pouches and tokens implies loyalty bought during uncertainty. Priests sanctify selection, guards control exits. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the edge, calm though isolated. The narrator explains that when legitimacy is threatened, ritual intensifies. The story must speak louder than fear. So politics is disguised as heaven. A dusk provincial border courthouse shows citizens behind ropes, officials handling seals, tablets, packets, weights, pouches, and tokens like permits and penalties. Priests sanctify judgment, guards stiffen the air. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled map, calm as if law is fate. The narrator states that mandate myths thrive in legal theater, paperwork replaces argument, and routine replaces consent. A grey noon famine ledger hall shows empty bowls and strict ration piles. Priests frame scarcity as sacred discipline. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a dais near an unlabeled plan, calm as hunger becomes proof. The narrator explains how hardship is weaponized. Survival becomes permission, permission becomes gratitude, gratitude becomes loyalty, then loyalty is called destiny. A torchlit army pay pavilion shows soldiers in ranks while officials distribute tokens and measure pay with weights. Sanctified by incense, Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled border map, calm as loyalty becomes commodity. The narrator explains that destiny is stabilized by incentives. Belief becomes materially safer than dissent when rewards are predictable and punishment is nearby. A dawn coastal signal tower shows beacon stacks and timing instruments on an unlabeled sea chart. Guards block the stairs, priests sanctify timing, scholars measure. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands beneath a canopy, calm as coordination becomes heaven's response. The narrator reveals how planned systems become miracles when method is hidden behind ritual and distance. A misty countryside pilgrimage gate shows travelers offering bundles, officials collecting toll tokens and permits, priests sanctifying monetized devotion. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled route map, calm as spiritual movement becomes regulated infrastructure. The narrator explains how mandate can bind economy and faith together, making obedience feel like devotion. A night palace regalia atelier shows artisans beside unmarked robes and staffs, approvals and budgets laid out in seals and pouches. Priests sanctify craftsmanship as sacred. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the regalia, calm as if authority can be worn into being. The narrator explains that standardized aesthetics create instant legitimacy, shaping emotion before thought. A dawn reconciliation hall after unrest shows local leaders and imperial officials across a table of sealed packets. Weights, pouches, and tokens like bargaining currency. Priests sanctify compromise, guards control who hears. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled province map, calm as if negotiation is heaven-guided. The narrator points out that mandate myths can absorb bending power by narrating flexibility as destiny. A midnight comet address plaza shows citizens in ordered tiers, guards controlling stares, priests with astronomical tools and prepared interpretations. A faint comet streak sits in the static sky. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a stage beneath a canopy, calm as awe becomes social pressure. The narrator explains that shared wonder becomes a shield, doubting feels like opposing the sky itself. A dawn public oath renewal corridor shows citizens in lines, tables of permits and rewards. Incense blessing loyalty as purity. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands on a platform, calm as repetition becomes reality. The narrator emphasizes that rehearsed loyalty becomes habit, and habit becomes proof, even when belief is hollow. A candlelit archive of authorized history shows scribes assembling a single version of events with seals, tablets, packets, and scroll cases. Priests sanctify writing, guards block corridors. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands at the table's head near an unlabeled map, calm as if memory is conquest. The narrator delivers a cold truth: when the archive controls what survives, destiny can be manufactured retroactively. A grey noon economic grievance hall shows citizens behind ropes holding small sacks and empty bowls while officials offer controlled remedies measured by weights and tokens. Priests frame frustration as moral disorder, guards stand at exits. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near an unlabeled plan, calm as if unrest is geometry. The narrator explains deflection, pain is narrated as test or public failure, and controlled relief buys obedience without admitting fault. A quiet exile writing room returns with blank pages, sealed letters, and an unlabeled folded map, while a guard silhouette stands outside. A companion holds a closed unmarked book. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands near the desk, calm as narrative becomes the last territory. The narrator explains that the mandate can persist after power ends if the story is shaped so that every outcome still sounds like the plan. A final dawn memorial plaza shows a simple uninscribed stone marker, citizens in ordered rows, priests sanctifying remembrance, officials managing memory budgets with tokens, guards controlling distance lines. The narrator explains that mandates can outlive rulers because institutions curate commemoration, turning one leader's aura into a template for successors. The concluding frame returns to the immense ceremonial hall that resembles a complete static ecosystem, cord and stone models linking temples, courts, schools, archives, granaries, ports, and forts, tables of weights and tokens, officials holding sealed dispatch packets, priests burning incense, guards maintaining fixed distance lines. Emperor Valerius Aurelian stands frozen at the center beneath a plain canopy, isolated by empty space and silence. The narrator delivers the final conclusion of the documentary. The heaven's mandate behind ancient emperors is often less a supernatural truth than an engineered machine of controlled meaning, restricted access, selective reward, and managed fear, until destiny becomes the only explanation left standing in public life. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more content like this. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think.